Two Little Lizards. Our village, Polevaya, was built by the Tsar's estate, you see. There were no plants or factories here at that time, and things were hard, and lots of shady folks. That's how it goes when the owner is out of sight, eh? So they sent soldiers to bring things to order. They even put up a village called Mountain Shield to make sure the newcomers would travel safe. Gumeshki, you see, was becoming famous those days because lots of riches just lay about on the surface. So folks would flock around to mine stuff while they could. And of course mine they did. And then they gathered us, common people, constructed a plant, even invited some Germans to manage it. But things just didn't go as well as they should have. They tried and tried, but the plant wouldn't give any profit. Mayhap the Germans didn't want to reveal their secrets, or maybe they didn't know something themselves. Whatever the snag was, the Gumeshki mine got to be neglected by them in the end. They wanted to use a different mine, but that one was thin and poor, nothing worthwhile to be found down there, and there was no point to build a plant near it. That is how our Polevaya got in Turchaninov's hands. Barin Turchaninov, he used to deal in salt, trade on the Stroganov's lands, and he had fingers in the copper business too. He had a plant, but it wasn't doing too well. That plant was not much better than our folks' handmade stuff. They burnt ore in piles, then heated it till it melted, and then boiled it some more. And the owner got some profit. Turchaninov, you see, liked profits. So when he heard that the estate's copper plant was doing from bad to worse, he approached them and asked if he could oversee it. "We are used to the copper business," he said. "We will sort things out." The Demidovs and other plant owners, the ones who were more well off and famous, they stayed away from it. They thought, if the Germans couldn't make it there, what's the use of this plant? Only losses and waste, they thought. So Turchaninov was given this plant and scissored to boot. All this wealth, and for free. Turchaninov came to stay in Polevaya and brought his own metal masters. He made a lot of promises to them of this and that. He, the Barin, knew how to get us folks to do what he wanted. He would have anyone around his pinky finger. "Do your best, my old friends," he said. "I'll owe you till the end of my days." Such a sweet tongue he had. He was an old hat, that one. He knew exactly what to say to spur them up. "Aren't you better than those Germans, eh?" he sang in their ear. The old masters were reluctant to move from their old places, but this word about the Germans ticked them off. They didn't want to make like they were not as good as the German masters. Those Germans, they would look down on our folks like they didn't even see them as equals. So the old ones took offense, of course. They looked around the plant and saw that it was well organized with all the proper equipment, better than the first Turchaninov's plant. Sure, the Tsar's estate built it, Then they went to see Gumeshki, looked around the ore there, and said, "What fools worked here, eh? This ore here will easily yield good metal half and half, provided we have enough salt, that is, like we are accustomed to." They, you see, had a secret. They added salt when they melted ore. That was their hope here. Turchaninov made sure his masters could do the job and fired those Germans, saying, "We don't need your services no more." What could the Germans do? They got to packing. Some set for home, some for other Russian plants. But they couldn't stop wondering how our common folks would manage a plant like this. So they talked to a couple of newcomers who were employed at the plant. They said, "Look closely. These masters must have some sneaky secret. What do they hope for with ore like this? And if you find something out, let us know. We'll pay you well." But one of those new guys refused to spy. He told our masters what was up. And the master said to Turchaninov, "You'd better hire our guys only to work in this plant. You see how things are. If we hire a stranger, mayhap he's a spy for those Germans. You profit from our secret too, eh?" Turchaninov agreed to that, of course, with a sly grin, and thought to himself, I will profit even more than y'all think, huh? Those days, you see, the Demidovs and other plant owners around here like to hire runaways as well as bashkirs, old believers, and others. Such workers were cheaper, they said, and with no one to answer for them to. So you can do whatever you want with them. But Turchaninov thought different. He thought, so I'll hire workers like this from here and there, but could I handle them? Mayhap not. Runaways are sly. They may plan something behind your back. Bashkirs? They are of an odd faith, and their language is not like ours here. Who knows what they could get up to? I'll lure the locals from my own plant, from far away, and I'll move them here with their families. Where will they run if their families are here? Things will be calm and quiet like this, and if they rebel, I'll show them a tight fist. So we'll see who makes a bigger profit. As for runaways or bashkirs, they should be kept away from the plant. And you see, that's how it turned out. Every man from our plant lived by the one law and was of the one faith. When I visited Tagil, I saw those of many different faiths, but for us, it would be unheard of to have a person of a different faith around here. And we were all Slavs here, except maybe overseers. Lots of thought was put in it, eh? So, when the old smelting masters told Turchaninov who they would like to have as workers, he was real keen on that. He even said to them, "Thank you all, old sons, for your wise advice. I'll remember you as long as I live. I'll do as you say, close our own plant and move all those folks to this one. And you look out for the most reliable ones. I'll buy them out or rent them from their barons. Please do your best to find some good ones, and I'll..." And he made more high promises. Promises came easy with him. He poured the masters wine, treated them to some delicious food, and sat down to feast with them, singing songs and dancing. He made up to those masters properly, you see. When they came back home, they praised and praised the new spot and the barn. "Lots of space there is, and the soil is rich, and the copper is fine, and one who moves there will make good money for sure. And the owner is our guy. He drinks and parties with us like with equals. We can live under one like him." And then Turchaninov's people arrived, making sure the locals would agree to move. In the end, they found more than enough volunteers for the plant and for other necessary works as well. Some got taken out for rent, others were bought out. We were still bonded in those days, you see. People were sold and bought like cattle. So, with no delay, all those folks and their families were moved to the new place, our Polivaya village. That same summer it was done. And there was no way back, of course. Even the ones who were free and hired couldn't go back. They were in such debt for the move, they wouldn't pay it until the day they died. Also, who would run away from their family? Blood is blood. Turchaninov had thought of everything. All those folks were as good as chained to the new place. There was only one guy left from the old workers at the plant, the one who told our masters about the Germans' dirty plan. Turchaninov wanted to send him into the mountain like the others, but one master stopped him. "Why would you do that? He was of good use to us, this one. We need to keep him at hand. He is smart." And then he asked the guy, "What did you do when the Germans were here?" And the guy said, "I was an Erzmüchlich." "What kind of job is that?" they asked. And he said, That's to walk around the grinder and make sure the ore is ground evenly and sieve it. That's not much of a job to work the sieve, they said. Do you know what they used to melt ore with? Nay, he said, they didn't let us anywhere close. They had a man of their own. We only brought whatever he told us. So I canned a little from what he asked for. I really wanted to know the business. I sometimes sneaked in to look at what the copper cleaner did too, but they never let us close to the smelting pots. The master listened to that and decided, I'll take you on as my apprentice. I'll teach you properly, and you'll give me some tips about what you gleaned from the Germans, eh? That is how this guy, Andruka was his name, ended up working at the furnaces. He was a quick study, and soon he was as good as the old master who taught him. 2 years passed. The plant was much different from when the Germans were here. Much more copper was mined, and our Gomeshki became famous. Rumors about our mines walked the earth. More people came to stay, and all from the same places where Turchaninov's old plant used to be. Lots of folks worked at the furnaces and even more in the mountain. Turchaninov's greed grew too. More and more money he wanted. No matter how many people came, he would find work for them all. He got richer and richer, you know. Even the Stroganovs were green with envy. They sent a petition to the Tsar's department saying that the Gomeshki mine was on their actual land and shouldn't have been passed to Turchaninov. The mine should be taken from him and given to them, the Stroganovs, they said. But Turchaninov was in power back then. He kept company with princes and senators as equals. The Stroganovs lost. Of course they did, when the Barin had all that wealth. But us, common folks, we didn't have it easy, and the old smelting masters were bitter, for he cheated them out of what had been promised. At first, he walked around them on tiptoes, you see, when the business was just starting. A little patience, old sons. Moscow wasn't built in one day, right? Let's get the plant running smoothly, and then you'll take a breather. But what breather? The longer the plant ran, the harder things became. The miners had it worst of all. People were flogged to death, and the furnace overseers were mad dogs. They would deal hard blows, even to the best masters, and hiss, "So what if you showed your copper secret? Now we can do all the smelting without you. We'll tell on you to the Barin. You'll know how hard life can be." Turchaninov was called Barin then, just Barin. No other name was needed. He stopped showing up at the plant by then. He was too busy, you see. All that money needed counting, eh? So the old masters who had talked our folks into moving here decided, we need to go see him. He's a Barin, of course, but he's our guy, eh? He knows what's right and what's wrong. You must remember how we sat at one table and drank out of one jar. We'll tell him everything straight. So they went, all of them, but weren't allowed to see the Barin. Barin, they were told, just had his coffee and turned in for a nap. You people go back to your plant and work as you should. Our guys made some noise at first. What nap, they grumbled. It's midday. Why would he be taking a nap? Wake him up, you. His people have come to see him. And the Barin finally showed. He had had enough sleep, it looked like, and there were some armed guards with him. Andruka, the apprentice, he was shouting louder than others, "Barin this and Barin that." He even told the Barin, "Do you remember our salt? Where would you be without it?" The salt to smelt copper with, you can. "Aye," says the Barin, "of course I do. Take this one, flog him, and salt him up proper, so he remembers too." They took others, of course, the ones that the barin pointed to. But he was sly as a fox, people say. He gave orders so that they'd take out the rebels and the chatty ones. The barin had not set foot in the plant for a while now, but he had his spies who told him who said what. So they flogged the loud ones, and the quiet ones were left alone. He just threatened those. "Watch close, you'll get the same treat if you don't work as you should." The other ones got all scared, started working double, and looked over their shoulders so that the spies wouldn't tell on them too. But, you see, they didn't have enough people to work because of all that, and of course they started to have losses in their business. They began looking for the old masters and putting them to work at the furnaces again. And the one who had taught our Andruka, he was not among the living anymore. They had flogged him to death, you know. So Andruka was taken in his stead. He turned out to be a good smelting master to begin with. His shifts had the best results. Turchaninov's people noted that and got to making jokes at his expense. They called him salted, but he didn't take offense. He even joked back at them, "Salted meat lasts longer, huh?" He got trusted like that, you see, and just when they thought nothing bad of him, froze 2 furnaces at once. He had left slag in there, and nothing could be done about that. Smart he was, our Andruka. He was taken, of course, and chained up in the mountain. The miners, they had heard about him a lot and tried to get him out, but it wouldn't work. There were guards next to him, and everybody had to be accounted for at all times. Couldn't be helped, that. And if you're chained up like that, how long will you stay strong? Even the strongest ones won't last long, eh? They would feed him when they wished. As for water, sometimes they forgot to bring it at all, so he had to drink whatever was down at his feet in the mine. But that water is bad for one's heart, you can. Unhealthy it is. He got from bad to worse like that on a chain for 6 months or maybe a year, and became all weak. Just a shadow left of the guy. What mining to ask of him? So the mine overseer says, "You'll get your relief soon enough, huh? We'll dig you a hole right here, don't you worry." He is ready to bury our guy, and Andruchak himself sees how bad he is. But he is young, and he has no death wish. And he thinks, they talk about the Lady of the Mountain. They say she helps us poor folks. If she was real, she would help me, no? She must have seen how I've been on a chain down here for so long. But it's all just fairy tales, ain't it? He thought this and dropped where he stood. Just fell like a stone into the muddy water of the slope. The water was cold, but he felt none of that. How long he lay like that, he didn't know, but he got warm all of a sudden. It's like he is lying on the grass, and the sun rays are gentle and hot like it's harvest time. So he lies like this and thinks, my death must be near, and my last dream is about a sunny day. But then it got hotter and hotter, scorching no less. He opened his eyes and didn't believe what he saw. He wasn't in the mountain anymore, but lying on some grassy hill in the middle of a forest. The pines are tall as tall, and the grass is short and scarce, and there are some little black stones in between, like tiles. And there's a huge stone on his right, as high as a wall, taller than those pines even. Andruka began to poke at himself. Mayhap he was sleeping. He would touch the stone, move a blade of grass, rubbed his feet. Muddy they were, of course, from all his time in the stope. And he saw that he wasn't dreaming in the end. the mud on his feet and legs was real, and the chains were gone. Hey, he figured, they must have thought I was dead and took me out of the mine. And here I am, not dead, ain't I? But what shall I do now? Run away or wait and see what happens? I wonder who put me here. He looked around and saw that there was a jar next to the stone, and there were slices of bread on top of it. He was real glad. Must have been my own guys who put me here then, and they didn't think me dead, even left me some drink and bread. Mayhap they'll come to see me when it's dark. That's when I'll find out what's what. Andruka ate up the bread, drank up the jar to the bottom, and the funny drink it was, he couldn't make out which kind, not like beer or wine, but it boosted his strength like magic. After the meal, he felt even better. He liked that place so much he could just stay there forever. But then he thought, what next? Mayhap my own guys will come, but what if the overseer and his men find me out? I should look around, see where I am. I wish I could get into a banya now, and some clothes would do nicely too. So he got to thinking. That's how it is, a living man will think about his living needs. He climbed on top of a stone and saw that Gumeshki and the plant were close by, and he could even see some people crawling about like ants. Andruka got worried even. What if someone noticed him from up where he was? He got off that stone, sat in his old place, and began thinking his thoughts while a bunch of lizards ran around him. So many they were, and all different colors. But 2 of them were odd, not like the others. They were both green, one bigger and one smaller. And so they frolicked in the sun, those lizards, hopping around in the grass as if playing. They must like the sunshine too, he thought. Thus he watched the lizards and didn't notice how a cloud covered the sun. A drizzle began, and all the lizards hid at once. Only the green ones didn't go away, just kept playing tag with each other, closer and closer to where he sat. But when the rain started in earnest, they too found shelter underneath a stone. One moment he saw them, and then they just vanished into thin air, it looked like. He thought it funny. He didn't hide from the rain, though. It was warm and wasn't going to last long. Instead, he took off his rags. I'll wash away some of the dirt at least, he figured. So he lay his rags around so that the rain would rinse them well. When the rain stopped, the lizards came back, dashing back and forth, dry and happy. And Andruka, he was getting cold. The evening was drawing near, and the sun wasn't as warm anymore. He wondered about those lizards. I wish I could do the same. Find a stone to hide under, and here's your home. He leaned against that large stone that he had climbed before to look about from. He didn't really put his full weight on it, but the stone rocked and moved like it was some kind of a door. Andruka jumped away, and the stone sat back in its original place. What a strange stone, he thought, so huge and so unstable, I could have been caught under it. But he came closer again, walked around to see it better. With no gaps or hole in sight, it looked like the stone was sitting fast in the ground. He tried to move it from the left and from the right, but the stone felt like it was part of a large rock and wouldn't budge an inch. Perhaps I was just lightheaded. I was seeing things, Andruka thought, and sat back where he was before. Those 2 green lizards came back too, running around him. One touched the stone with her head, where Andruka had leaned on it in the first place, and the stone rocked lightly. There appeared a gap along the whole long side of it. The lizard snuck inside, and the gap vanished. The other lizard ran to the opposite side of the stone and hid there, like guarding the exit. But meanwhile it eyed Andruka as if saying, "My friend is going to come back soon. I'll wait." He waited too. The other side of the stone developed an identical gap, and as the gap grew, the first lizard showed its little head to look around as if to see where the other one was. And the second lizard was still, like it wasn't a moving living creature at all. So the first one sprang out, and the other one jumped on its back, like, gotcha, like they played a game and it won. And then they both ran somewhere and were nowhere to be seen. It was like they showed Andruka where to enter that stone and where to exit. He looked over the stone once again. It looked whole, with no gaps or imperfections, not even a trace of where to get in. Let's try one more time, he decided. Won't hurt, eh? So he leaned on the stone where he did before, and the stone almost rolled on top of him. But Andruka didn't care, he just gawked at what was below. There was a stairway, and a proper one, like in the baron's new house. He stepped onto that stairway, and the lizards ran in front, showing him the way. He went down 2 more steps, and was still holding onto the stone as he thought, if I let go of it, it'll roll back, and I'll be stuck in the dark here. So he stood, and the 2 lizards stopped and looked at him waiting. Finally, Andruka figured out, the lady must be testing my courage. That's what it is. They say she loves to do just that. And he made up his mind. He walked down some more, and when his head was at the level of the entrance gap, he let the stone go. The stone rolled back on top, but it wasn't dark. It was like a sun rose somewhere below, and it was light as day. He saw large double doors made of stone, and there were beautiful carvings on those doors. On the right, there was a simple door, small and unadorned. The lizards stood in front of it like showing him, that's where you want to go. Andruka opened the door and saw a banya inside, a real proper banya, but everything was made of stone. There was a seat and a bucket with a ladle and all that stuff. Only the vichta was birch, and it was hot as hot inside that banya. Your ears could burn. Andruka was real happy. He wanted to wash and dry his rugs first in front of that stone hearth. But as soon as he took them off, they disappeared. He looked behind him and saw some new shirts and other clothes hanging in the closet, all kinds of garments, workers, barons, merchants' stuff. Andruka didn't think long. He got onto that hot stone seat and whipped himself with that vichta as long as his heart desired. He got all warm and clean and sat down to catch his breath. He then found some working clothes, like the ones he was used to wearing, and opened the small door to get out. The lizards waited for him at the big doors with the carvings. He pulled on that door and stopped. What a wonder! He sees a huge room like he has never seen before. The walls in that room are all covered with fancy stone patterns, and there's a table in the middle with all kinds of dishes and drinks. He was hungry, of course. He didn't think twice, just sat at the table. The food was all familiar, but the drink was strange, sort of like he drank from that jar earlier, a potent drink, but doesn't make you drunk. So he ate and drank till he was full, like at a wedding or some other big feast, and then bowed to the lizards. Thank you, dear hostesses, for this treat. And they sat on a tall bench, nodding their little heads like saying, You are very welcome, dear guest. Then one of them, the smaller one, hopped off the bench and ran somewhere. Andruka followed it. It took him to a bed and halted there. You can rest there, like. The bed was so well made he was afraid to touch it, but still, tired as he was, he lay down and fell asleep at once. And the light went out. Meanwhile, the mine overseer raised the alarm. He looked in on our guy to check if he was still alive and saw only the chain. He got all worried and started running like a chicken with its head cut off. "Where is he? What do I do now?" So he runs and runs around and around. Our guy is nowhere to be found, and no one to suspect who could have helped him. He fears he'll have to answer for Andrukak himself, and he tells his bosses. He wasn't too smart, that one, but thought of a way out. He found some stones at the sides of the stove and piled them inside it. And then he went to tell his boss. "Look," the overseer said, "there must have been a stone fall overnight, and he's under there. Only one chain is left of the guy." His boss, it looked like, didn't know much about anything, so he believed the overseer. And that one kept on saying, "There is no point in digging him out now, eh? The whole stove is weak. The ceiling could cave in. Besides, there is no good ore here anymore, and the dead man doesn't care where he lies, does he now?" Our miners saw that the stonefall was fake, of course, but kept quiet. They thought, "The man has had enough at last. Let him lie and have his final rest." So the overseer's boss said to the barin, "Our salted guy got buried under a stonefall, the one who froze our furnaces back then." And the barin, sly as he was, used this for his benefit. "The man was punished by God himself," he said. "We need to tell the priests about this so they can preach about it to the serfs. It'll be a lesson for them not to mess with the barin." The priests began their preaching, of course. Everybody found out that Andruka got buried in the stonefall down in the mine. They were sorry for him, sure. He was a good man, they said. Not many like him are left. And our Andruka? He just slept and slept. The bed was warm and soft to his tired body. He slept for a couple of days, then turned on the other side and fell asleep again. By and by, he had enough sleep and rest and felt well again, like he was never sick and hadn't spent all that time in the mountain. When he finally woke up, the table was ready for him again, and the two lizards sat on the bench, looking at him with their lively eyes. He ate and drank and then bowed to the lizards. "Thank you, my dear hostesses, and now it is time to thank the barin for his salt. I'll make him a thank you present like no other." One lizard, the smaller one, hopped off the bench and ran somewhere. He followed it. The lizard led him to another door. He pushed it and saw a stairway that went up all the way to the ceiling. There was a little bracket up there, like a handle. Andruka figured out what it was for. He got up the stairway, pulled the bracket, and opened the hatch. Andruka got out and found himself at the same hill, and he saw it was sunset at the time. "That," he thought, "is exactly what I need. I'll go to the mine while it's dark. Mayhap I'll see some of our guys and ask around what is up around here." He headed in that direction, walking slowly so that nobody saw him who shouldn't have. He came close to the mine and hid behind a heather bush. There were many people around there, but he didn't know what to do. They stood in groups, and he didn't recognize anyone. It got dark as dark. Finally, one of the men was left by himself, and Andruka recognized him. That one was a good guy, reliable, if only a bit simple. They had stood at the furnace together, and the guy was sent to Gumeshki as well. Andruka called out to him in a low voice, "Hey, Mikhailo, come, come." The guy heard Andruka's voice and came closer, but then stopped. "Who's that?" he asked. "Come here, I say." Mikhailo halted like he was afraid. Andruka stuck his head out of the bush so the other guy would see him for who he was. Mikhailo gave a little cry and ran off. And to Andruka's bad luck, some woman from the village came by that same place. She saw Andruka too and got to screaming for real. One's ears would hurt. "Oh my! Oh my! Dead man walking! Dead man!" And Mikhailo shouted, "So did Andruka, just showed in front of me. I saw him like he was living behind that heather bush right there." Folks started to fuss and worry. Some ran away from the mine, but the bosses were the first to run. Others said, "Let's go look." And they went all together, but Andruka didn't want to show himself in front of a crowd. Who knows what kind of people there were among them? He hid farther away in the forest. Those folks got fearful, too dark in between the trees at night, and went back home. Andruka thought up something new. He went past Gomeshki through the woods and found himself at the copper plant. Those who saw him there got scared, of course. They threw their tools and ran wherever they could. The night overseer even climbed the roof, so afraid he was. By the next day, when they took him off that roof, he had lost all his wits and couldn't remember who he was. So Andruka had the plant all to himself, and he froze all the furnaces like the time before. The barin, he heard about the dead man walking, you see. He ordered the priests to go to the plant. But they were nowhere to be found somehow. Then the barin locked his house and said to open the door to nobody. Andruka saw that nothing more was to be done and went back to the stone room inside the mountain. But he thought, "You'll wait, I'll think of something to help you remember your salt." The day after, there was a lot of fuss about the plant. The furnaces were all frozen, with slag inside them. That stuff is no joke for sure. The barin was in actual tears. There was a lot of bustle around the Gumeshki mine as well. He, the barin, told them to dig out our guy from under the stone pile and give him to the priests so that they could bury him properly and he wouldn't walk the earth anymore. They moved away the stone in Andruka's stove, but there was no dead body underneath. They only found the chain, and it was undamaged, like nobody filed it off or anything. By and by, they asked for the overseer. He tried to weasel out of it and blame the workers, but had to confess in the end. So the barin was told what had happened, and everything changed at once. The barin got real cross and bellowed, "So he is alive, is he? Catch him, you stupid fools!" And he sent his guards to search the forest. Andruka didn't know that and went outside in the evening again. The stone palace was beautiful for sure, but he felt better out on that hill and in that grass. He sat by the stone and thought how to go meet his friends. He had a girl too, you know. She must be thinking I'm dead. I wonder if she cried at all about me. And just his luck, some village women were walking by. Mayhap they were coming home from some haymaking or had been picking some late berries. Lots of people there are out and about in the summer, eh? So they walked in the forest close to that hill where he was. First, Andruka heard their singing and then their chatter. One of them said, "I wonder what Tasutka thinks. She must have heard her Andruka is alive and well." And the other said, "Sure, alive he is. How else would he have froze all the ovens?" "So, what about Tasutka? Did she go look for him?" "Such a fool!" another one said. "I told her yesterday that he is all right, but she believes her witch of a grandmother. Tasutka, she is much afraid that Andruka will come to her window at night, and she bawls and bawls like the cow she is." "So daft. She does not deserve a guy like him. If he was mine, I wouldn't be scared of him even if he was dead." Andruka listened to this and got real curious who was calling his Tasutka such names. And he also thought, mayhap I can pass the message through them to her. He went in the direction of those women's voices. He knew those girls, but saw that he couldn't show up in front of them. Lots of people walked with them, and kiddies too. How would he, the dead man, show himself? Andrucha watched them for a while, but didn't say anything. He just turned back and sat in his old place. Sad and bitter he was. And while he was gone, some barin's dog must have seen him and told on him. The hill got surrounded by the barin's guards. Real glad they were. The main one shouted, "Take him!" Andrucha saw them running to get him from all sides. He pushed a stone and dived down. The barin's guards ran to that spot, and there was nobody there. Where is he, they think? So they push and pull the stone. They puff and pant, but the stone won't budge. So they think in fear, he must be dead indeed, the way he went down into the ground. They ran to tell the barin what they saw. He shook with fright when he heard the news. "I need to go to XIXthe," he said. "There is some urgent business I need to attend to. You catch him without me, and if you don't, you'll get no mercy from me." So he threatened them, jumped on the horse, and galloped off. The servants and the guards didn't know what to do. They decided to go back to the hill and wait. Meanwhile, Andrucha was there under the stone. He too didn't know what to do. He wasn't one to sit still, but he couldn't come out either. "I'll wait for the nightfall," he thought. "I'll try my luck then. Mayhap I'll sneak out when it's dark, and I'll figure out what to do next afterwards." So he decided to leave and wanted to take some food with him, but the lizards were nowhere to be seen. He felt bad taking their food without them seeing, like stealing. He thought, "I'll do without. If I live, I'll find bread somehow." He looked around the stone palace room. Pretty it was, and everything was in its place. And he said, "I thank this dwelling, and I will now leave for another one." That is when the lady showed herself to him in her proper shape. Our guy stood speechless, so beautiful she was. And she told him, "You can't go out the same way anymore. You'll have to go elsewhere now. And don't think about food. You'll get enough when you want. You deserve this. This tunnel will let you out where you wanted to. Go through that door, but don't look back. Remember, don't look behind you. Got it?" "I won't," he answered. "Thank thee for all your kindness, lady." He bowed to her deeply, turned, and saw the exact same woman at the other door, but it's like she was even prettier than the first one. He forgot himself and looked back. What of the first one? And the lady grins at him, and she shakes her head. "Have you forgotten what I told you?" "Yes," he says, "I've lost my mind from all this beauty." "Huh," she says, "and they call him salty. Such a proper guy he is in all respects, but cannot sort out which girl is which. What shall I do with you?" "Do what you will," he says. "I'll forgive you this once, but don't turn around again. You'll call bad luck on your head." Andrucha went to the door, and the other one opened it for him. There was a tunnel behind it, light as day, and he couldn't see the end of it. Did he turn around again? I don't know that. My old ones didn't say, and neither did they know where the tunnel led him about. Nobody saw him around here ever since, but folks remembered about him. Turchaninov got a real salty present from him, huh? And the other ones, Turchaninov's guards, they waited around that stone for a long time, day and night. Our folks went to see those fools. But then they probably got tired of all that waiting. They wanted to blow that stone up with powder. Our miner guys were ordered to break up that whole hill. And the barin, he came to his senses by then and wasn't afraid no more. He stomped his feet and shouted at them. "You fools!" he screamed. "You had nothing better to do than to guard an empty stone while Gumeshki lost all profits. And the bailiff's ass got burned to boot. What the heck you're all good for?